crowded room on a Friday, but appreciate you all being here. I'm Walt, filling in for Will, who runs Blockspace Media. I work at Standard Crypto. It's just a Bitcoin venture fund. We do some stuff in Ethereum and Solana as well, and are kind of broadly active in the space, but mostly focused on Bitcoin. I'll be the head of the panelists. But we're going to talk a bunch about Bitcoin L2s, sidechains, staking, kind of the landscape going into a really big year for Bitcoin, and what'll fundamentally look like a very different Bitcoin and Ethereum landscape in about 12 months. But first off, I'm joined by two great panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves and their projects, and then we'll get it going with questions.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Orkun. I'm one of the co-founders of Citrea, and Citrea is the first zk rollup on Bitcoin that we have been building for around 2 years, and recently, actually a couple months ago, being live on testnet and going to mainnet in a few months.
Hey everybody, great to be here. My name is Dylan. I'll start by saying I'm not a maxi, so maybe we can be friends. But I'm building a decentralized exchange for Bitcoiners. It's built on layer 1 and also on the stacks layer. And I think Bitcoin has the best chance to be around, maybe in 10, 50, 100 years from now. And fungible tokens exist on Bitcoin now, and I think they'll play a big part in that. So. Excited to chat with you guys today.
First question, will there be an ETH Denver next year? And if so, why or why not?
I mean, I think last year was much more crowded, I feel, and it was all Bitcoin events around, and this year they are still around, but most of the ETH events are not here. So maybe next year there will be Bitcoin Denver, but not sure.
Yeah, it'll definitely still be ETH Denver next year, I think, but like last year, there was a lot of excitement around all the Bitcoin L2s emerging, and I think this year, at least in our little bubble, it's more about what have you done for me lately? How much have you accomplished in that time? What's live? What are really now? I think it's more about creating great products for people, and I think that we are able to take a lot of lessons that we've take a lot of lessons from Ethereum and what works well, and build that in a Bitcoin-centric way, and we can do that in probably less time. So I think a lot of the advancements that we've seen on Ethereum, you can also see built in a Bitcoin-centric DeFi way, but maybe in less time. So maybe 2 years. I'll give you 2 years, but it'll be BTC Denver. But
2 years over under. What's your read?
Yeah, I think even next year, the Bitcoin events in Denver is just I don't know why we are doing this in Denver, first of all, but still we are doing it. So people are coming and they're doing Bitcoin events. And it's like I said, basically last year it was just more like an introduction to all the Bitcoin L2s and stuff. This year we are just getting more things in the production, especially on the new layer 2 category. And next year we will hopefully see more applications on Bitcoin, and the year after basically, if there's enough applications for me to use on Bitcoin, why would I use any other thing?
So let's kind of zoom out, and then we'll move on to kind of the more specific L2 stuff. But in let's say in 18 months, Citrea is live, is working. It provides a lot of the same functionality as Ethereum. We also have similar stuff with stacks in Bitflow, and we do have exchanges similar to what's on Ethereum. What's really the use case or the need for Ethereum or for Solana or for any of these networks? Do you think there's fundamental limitations on kind of Bitcoin itself that we're always going to have alternative networks, or do you think we can kind of encroach on the Ethereum space and kind of suck up the users and in the networks and the apps? How does that kind of play out, assuming we get roll-ups, stake chains, side chains, merge mine chains, whatever ends up working. How do you guys kind of map that?
I can start maybe. Yeah, for Bitcoin layer 2s, so basically why we created all these chains in the first place was for Ethereum, it was Vitalik wanted to build this on Bitcoin, wanted to bring more programmability to Bitcoin, and he failed, and then he launched Ethereum. And for Solana, they think Ethereum is too slow for reach a global scale, so they launched Solana. But right now, we have opportunity to build all of these on Bitcoin, obviously in different trust assumptions. You cannot build fully Bitcoin secured layer with Solana speed. Obviously, you have to do some trade-offs. But we can just do these trade-offs and build next to Bitcoin or on Bitcoin, just somewhere more close to Bitcoin, rather than building a standalone L1 or L2 on other chains. And I think, yeah, that's the Bitcoin's greatest chance. Because as an asset, I think it's widely acceptable that Bitcoin is the best asset among other currencies. And for the tech, it was just all the problem was about the tech for most people in crypto, that you cannot do enough with your Bitcoin. So why am I even holding this Bitcoin? I can just hold ETH and do all the other stuff on Ethereum. But right now with Citrea, it's becoming that you can just hold Bitcoin and do the exact same stuff you do on Ethereum on Bitcoin with Bitcoin security and Bitcoin liquidity. So there is probably no point to use those systems. I don't think they will just like be gone. But obviously today the dominance of Bitcoin is probably around 60% if I'm not mistaken. And most of the others just like altcoins. And I don't think it will be ever 100%, but it can be just 90% and the rest of the 10% will be issued on Bitcoin other than just being issued on other chains. I think that's how I see it will be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think if we're really not focused on a great user experience, like then maybe we're missing the point of this cycle, right? I think Solana gaining a lot of adoption was mostly about just the ease of use and not having to go between layer 1s and layer 2s. And when we're building on Bitcoin, right, like we're not trying to change Bitcoin, we are building layer 2s. So how do we look at what's happened on Ethereum and try to do that maybe better or differently? And maybe it ends up looking like more like a monolithic scaling solution. Like, and there's like really one dominant one. There's a bunch of different Bitcoin L2s right now. Maybe only one of them wins. Maybe only one of them needs to win. But it might end up being multiple, and people might help. Like, we would end up with multiple. We'd end up with fragmented liquidity issues, and you might have people come along to try to solve that interoperability maybe between those Bitcoin L2s. But yeah, I think I don't know. I've obviously placed my own bet, building on Bitcoin, and so I think that I think we have like the winner is going to be the people that help transition between like just using native Bitcoin and abstracting the L2s. And you really don't even need to know that you're aware of using it. Yeah, I think that's going to be the healthiest transition.
So, the title is, are they real solutions or not? So I think it'd be interesting to talk about, the differences within Ethereum rollup, a plasma chain on Ethereum. There's different things people are working on in the Ethereum space, and there's also several live rollups that are in different stages of decentralization, but are working and are really good products. So I think it'd be interesting, like what can you do on Bitcoin that you can do on Ethereum, and what can you do on Ethereum that you can't do on Bitcoin, and then how does that kind of affect miners, validators of the sidechain, users, and what do you think like the users really care about? I think Bitcoin is like a very simple kind of culture, so people like very simple things. They like the self-sovereignty, the non-custodial nature. So how does that kind of play in with the differences from Ethereum, where people might be more comfortable with that?
I think Bitcoiners in general just like care more about security and trust assumptions, obviously. But still, Bitcoiners is not obviously a monolithic kind of like single set of users. It's just a bunch of users in the room. There are multiple people using Ethereum, but they're still Bitcoiners. They hold Bitcoin, and they probably want to use their Bitcoin as well. I think Ethereum kind of like went into these phases a lot. They initially like launched sidechains like Polygon. They tried Plasma, it didn't work, and they ended up building a lot of rollups, Validiums, Optimiums, whatever it is. And it was because they get approximate to the best solution that provides the better trade-off than others in terms of the security and usability. And for Bitcoin, we will just still find that also kind of probably PMF in the like long run about which is the better trade-off. Launching a pure sidechain gives you the better UX, but it gives you less security than a rollup, for example, or a Validium. And on the other side, if you just build a rollup, maybe UX is not that great. But long term, we had like plans to solve, like just find a better trade-off, I would say. It's not solving anything, but it's just like finding a better spot in the spectrum. And I think Bitcoiners will just get approximate to that point. And they won't just use a chain because it's more secure or more user-friendly. They use apps. And apps should be the ones, they basically the face that provides that security trade-off or the interface to the Bitcoiners and users. And they will obviously care about security. Maybe user doesn't care, but the developer cares. So they should be just prioritizing the layers which provides the better trust assumptions so that they build better apps and they reach to more users.
Yeah, I think maybe in the past we've been blocked by like bad UX and maybe impractical or infeasible scaling solutions, but I really think that's not the case anymore. I think now we have like all the building blocks in place, or like very, very close to being live on mainnet as well. Citrea, Arch, Stacks, like a bunch of different L2s. And I think no one's really nailed it yet in the Bitcoin space in a way that resonates with miners, traders, capital deployers, and also with a great wallet. Doing all those things together, no one's nailed that yet. So I think the door is pretty wide open, and it really is going to come down to who is building the best product at the intersection for all those key stakeholders.
Yeah, how would you kind of differentiate under the hood on those things? Like, I think there's a cultural question between all those different solutions, and then there's, kind of like the real technology, what you can do on Bitcoin. There's a big debate about, soft forks versus BitVM versus something else. I'd be kind of interested on your perspective on it, because you're building on an ecosystem that's been around substantially longer and has kind of it coexisted alongside Ethereum, but also is now kind of experiencing, new ideas coming in, whether it's adding CTV, whether it's different derivatives of like the BitVM idea. How do you guys kind of view that, and what do you think is like really important for your users?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, maybe we'll see more opcodes, right? But Bitcoin culture is definitely very slow to change. I guess I'm rooting for Udi. We'll see if he gets it done. It feels like Bitcoin is, in the meantime, what can we do, right? We can build the best with what we have, I think. And I think, at least I see my job is to showcase that the future of finance can be built on Bitcoin rails. And over time, you might see slower changes built to the L1 that unlock even more functionality. Maybe for ZK, maybe for more trustless, interoperability. Like right now, Lightning is the only one that has unilateral exit, I think, right? But it doesn't have global state, doesn't have smart contracts the way that you would expect, and so there's all sorts of different trade-offs. But yeah, I think that's my job, is to showcase that that you can use Bitcoin, and I think we'll move away from like deploying Bitcoin into like a liquidity pool or something, right? It's going to be more into like deploying Bitcoin into a strategy, and so those are things that we can already build today. But you're right, like people have to be comfortable with the trust assumptions. So is it like a one of n, or is it maybe on the Stacks network where if you're bridging Bitcoin in and out, you have to have like 71%, and it's more of like a trusted federated model that maybe is moving to more open and decentralized over time. Yeah,
for us, I think obviously the soft fork discussion is just like an endless discussion. As we see for the last 2 years with Opcat, CTV, and whatever else. And for us, I think we just want to build whatever possible today, and then showcase that we can actually provide better UX, better use case for Bitcoiners to use their Bitcoin. And then if like whatever opcode basically makes it faster, cheaper, more trustless, we will just like advocate for it. And we hopefully think that the users will also think the same with us, because it just provides everything better, but the same, basically the application they like to use. So instead of just pushing an opcode without building anything, we just want to build something first and show what you can build. If also we have additional opcodes, then we can maybe like support any other opcode publicly.
And there are definitely like Bitcoin is fun again, right? Like the Bitcoin season 2 folks are interested in doing different activities on chain than people ever imagined before. Like if you look at Q4, like I had a tweet where I said Bitcoin is a meme a meme coin chain now, because over half of the transactions were runes transactions, but they were actually all mints. So what that tells me is that rather than saying more transfers, right? No one's really nailed a good trading experience yet for those fungible tokens. So now that we have the fungible token standards that are so native, people are very interested in them. It's like a smaller set of like really enthusiastic, Bitcoin people. There's so many people outside of our bubble that have no clue that you can do any of this stuff on Bitcoin. some of the stuff that we built as well that to try to make it similar to like a Jupyter style experience, right? Is like you can have like a smart wallet on the Stacks layer, and you can when you're depositing into the Stacks layer, like it mints directly to that smart contract, and then you can have limit orders, DCA, or even just like automatic deposits to start farming. And so that's like it really just starts with one Bitcoin transaction to kick that off. So yeah, I think Bitcoin's fun again. Really was what started this rant.
Another kind of interesting thing for these in terms of real solutions. I think the title's supposed to be like what is technically a real solution, what's technically an L2, which I don't think anyone wants to beat that too much. But I think there's also a question of like what are the solutions Bitcoin culturally should care about. So like Bitcoin is not proof of stake; it's proof of work. It's kind of the only network that's done that. Every other one has kind of bootstrapped itself in proof of stake and kind of has ossified its validator set in a way that's arguably very adversarial to the original idea of kind of internet money. So kind of wondering, as you guys kind of like zoom out and view your own projects and think about where they fit in the broader Bitcoin world, are they solutions for things like self-custody? Are they solutions for things like the UTXO tree getting far too large? Are they solutions for things like BlackRock coming in and owning a ton of Bitcoin and I don't think this is happening, but paying Bitcoin Core developers to get the soft fork, the covenant they want? We've seen similar things happen on Ethereum, similar things happen in Solana. Kind of curious how you guys view your solution as a solution for Bitcoin, not just a business or a company or a protocol.
So I think like we had a very straightforward approach in the beginning. We actually built on ordinals for a while when we first started on Bitcoin. And then we wanted to add more features, basically just like how we can make swaps better or how we can build a lending borrowing. And we started to use our ZK knowledge. And we ended up building something very similar to a ZK rollup, but much more painful code base, basically. And so we said, let's just build a ZK rollup from scratch. And that was the story. So for us, the main thing is the utility, not like the crazy yield or meme coins, like what you can do with your Bitcoin and how you can do it in the best way possible. Probably much better than the L1. So that's why we are just like use Bitcoin DA, settle proofs on Bitcoin, has one of a trust assumption, so that we can actually say to Bitcoiners, okay, you can just move your Bitcoin here with very, very minimal trust assumptions, arguably the most trust minimized solution possible in the markets. And then you can just use all of these applications that existed in the previous cycle, but they were all custodial. So you lose all of your money. Now you can just actually use this in your mobile phone with your own seed phrases, and you can even abstract those seed phrases, but still can be self-custodial. And then you can do lending borrowing, mint a stable coin backed by Bitcoin, or bet on some market using your Bitcoin. So it's just like more use cases with almost the same security, rather than just like trying to create some experimental space. It's just like still experimental, but we first need to build those primitives so that we can make the other things live.
I think the number one thing that we need to care about is making sure that people use the chain. I think a lot of people left, one, for more programmability elsewhere, but we're kind of solving
Bigger
that.
blocks?
No. I think my hope for Bitflow is that we give people more reasons to use their Bitcoin, and that ultimately contributes to the strength of the network, the sustainability of the network long term. When miners have to rely on just the transaction fees alone and not block subsidies. And I think I care about that above pretty much anything else. That and building a good product. But yeah, those two. Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. We're about out of time. So how can people find you, and what do you want them to know about your projects in the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think for us, like we launched an incubation program called Citrea Origins, where we only work with like very early stage founders to build their Bitcoin applications. So if you just go to citrea.xyz or on Twitter, citrea_xyz, you can just find all the web pages and the forms that's related to that. So if you're a developer building something on Bitcoin or wants to build something on Bitcoin, you can also find me around today or on Twitter, 0x_Orkun.
Yeah, you can go to, if you want to learn more about Bitflow or start trading or earning with it today, you can maybe download an Xverse wallet on your phone and just go to bitflow.finance. We have pools live today that you can deposit and start earning, and you can also trade. So yeah, And if you guys love it, let me know. If you hate it, let me know. Would appreciate your feedback. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Round of applause for our panelists.